It's my last video for the year, and I thought it would be fun to share with you what my word for 2020 will be. So, this will actually be my 5th year choosing a word of the year. I started this in 2016 after really not ever doing New Year's resolutions, thinking they were stupid, kind of picking one sometimes, but never sticking to it. And I just decided that what was lacking in my life, instead of just achieving one goal, a lot of areas really needed some work. And what was lacking was some discipline. So for 2016, my word that year was discipline. And I have to say that it changed me in so many more ways than ever picking like one goal or one New Year's resolution has ever done. It really stretched me, and it was something that I could permeate into multiple areas of my life, not just like one thing, like trying to lose 5 pounds or deciding to write thank you notes every week to people in my life. You know, you could come up with so many different resolutions, but what I've found is that choosing just a word which brings your intention for the years, how you want to show up to every area of your life, has actually been a lot more motivating, and I've stuck to it for 5 years. And so I've continued to do this now, and I am so excited. So another reason that choosing a word of the year is better for you than picking a New Year's resolution is that only 8% of people actually keep their resolutions or say that they have kept their resolutions. About 50% of people say that they completely fail at keeping any sort of New Year's resolution. And you can see this by how many people sign up and go to the gym in January and then never go back or cancel their membership shortly after. So choosing a word that is motivating to you and that you can just quickly remind yourself of how it is that you want to be for the new year, I think you'll actually find to be more motivating. So before I get to my word for 2020, I want to go over the words I have used in the past. One, this will give you an idea of different types of words that you can choose for yourself. And also you can kind of see the progression of how I've gotten to where I am now. So I mentioned in 2016, the first year I did this, I chose the word discipline. I needed so much discipline in my life, from everything from my budget to working out consistently, and just showing up to things in my life that were important to me. I was just kind of lazy. I just needed some discipline. And what I found is that I accomplished so much more. And every time I would start to complain or be like, oh, I don't want to do that, I'd be like, stay disciplined, Taylor, just stay disciplined. And I'd be like, okay. And it was all I needed ever to just motivate me. So in 2017, now that I had kind of created some discipline in my life that has now stuck with me for the next 5 years, it's not something that it just has to be 1 year at a time, something that might actually create some habits for you in your life. But in 2017, I chose the word take action. There were some things about my life I was unhappy with, and instead of thinking about them or worrying about them or complaining about them, I decided I was going to do something about them. And so my word that year was take action. And that was actually the year that I started my online business. I quit my job and I started making plans to actually move to New Zealand. So that was a huge year for me. And again, a year all about taking action and overcoming my fears that I had by just doing something about it. And then in 2018, that was my first year on the road. That was my first year in New Zealand, doing my business full time, doing house sitting for the first time, and just so many firsts in 2018. And so my word actually ended up being learn. Learn everything you can was kind of my motto that year. I learned new systems and processes and how to travel and how to budget my money differently as a nomad and all these different things. And so 2018 was a big year of learning for me. So then what happened in 2019 was I was kind of just floating and doing everything and taking everything in. I wasn't being very intentional. So 2019, I picked the word intentional, and that was this year. And so that was kind of cutting out the fat. That was kind of starting to say no to things. That was starting to be really intentional about where I spent my time and my money and my resources. And that was really, really big to me, to be really intentional about those 3 areas of my life. And it led me on some really cool journeys and paths, including a trip with Hacker Paradise, including, making the decision in September to stay in the US. Once I came back, I had a trip planned to New York, so I decided to stay instead of going back to Europe. That was a really intentional decision that I made based on where I was and how I was feeling at that time of the year. So all of that was being really intentional and kind of starting to narrow and focus where I wanted to spend my time and my resources, like I said. It also led me to creating my blog, creating my YouTube channel, all part of my business goals. So in 2020, I have now decided that my word for the year is going to be establish, which sounds a little counterintuitive as a digital nomad whose life is completely built on being flexible and going with the flow and not having a lot of constraints. But I do still believe that boundaries are healthy and boundaries are good for your daily life and your, creating goals and things for the year. So there's something about this word establish, and to be honest, it really surprised me when it kind of hit me and I was like, oh, okay, what does that mean? I mean, at first I was just like, that sounds right, but I don't really know what that means. But I think, I did so many new things in 2018 and 2019. I was trying to be more intentional and do a little bit of growth, but really now I want to be more established. I want my blog to be more established. I want my YouTube channel to be more established. I want my goals that I pick on a quarterly basis. I do quarterly planning. I want to actually hit those and have them mean something and really work on this idea of being established. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to stop traveling. It doesn't mean that I'm going to not be flexible, but I'm going to work on creating a little bit of stableness in my life, in the areas of my life that I can do that and become a little bit more established so that I can continue to grow. That is why I choose a word of the year. Those are some of the words that I've chosen in the past. And I want to give you 5 tips on how you can choose your own word of the year. My first tip for starting to think about and brainstorm what kind of word you might choose is to think about where you are and think about where you'd like to be and what is it in between that is kind of lacking. So I mentioned this when I picked my first word of discipline. That's what I was lacking in my life. When I picked my phrase take action, that is what I was lacking in my life. And so for me personally, that is typically where I try to start. What is the word that can kind of bridge the gap between where you are and what you want to be and kind of permeate and be applied to multiple areas of your life, whichever those areas are. It doesn't have to be everything you do. It can be just how you show up in your everyday. It can be how you apply yourself in your relationships and in your business and in different parts of your life. But it could also just be a handful of things like, these are the 3 areas I really want to work on next year. This is what I'm lacking in them. Here's the word that I'm going to take with me. So I would start by thinking about, what is it that you're lacking and what can bridge that gap? Now, my tip number 2 is to make it a verb. You want it to be strong and you want it to be actionable. So a good example of this is in 2018, I mentioned my word was learn. That was actually not what my word started out as. My word started out as enjoy, because that's what I wanted to do, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go to New Zealand. I just want to enjoy my time and do all these things. But really, I was learning and I was taking in information, and that was what I needed to be focusing on. It wasn't a time for me to stop and just enjoy. And yeah, I did that, but it wasn't really a strong enough word. And so I ended up changing it partway through the year. So note that you can do that. If you pick the wrong word, that's okay, just change it. And maybe halfway through the year you decide like you're on a completely different path and it needs to be changed, that's fine too. But whatever it is, whatever word you choose, make sure it's a verb and you can act on it. My tip number 3 is to kind of just like play around with different words. It's sort of like picking a name. Like, think of a word, see if it feels right. Nope, move on and pick another one. I've been thinking about my word for 2020 for about 6 to 8 weeks now, knowing that I was kind of starting to get in planning mode, and it took me a little bit of time, and I've tried on different words, and there was even a word I found about 6 weeks ago, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I didn't write it down, and I completely forgot what it was. So clearly that wasn't the right word, but it was just one of those things where there might be more than one that works for you, and that's okay, but just sort of like keep thinking about it and keep trying on different ones and see which one fits. Now, the next tip is to just say to don't overthink it, because this isn't really something that, again, there's not a right or wrong answer. I say this all the time. There's not a right or wrong way to do things. It's just whatever works for you. So if you're trying to really think about it and dig deep and, you know, nothing's coming to you, then you're probably trying too hard. The word establish came to me while I was on a train. My mind was just kind of wandering, and I wasn't really focusing on this at all. I was kind of thinking about something different, and it just came to me, and I was like, oh, okay. And so sometimes you need to just like let the thinking go. Maybe take some deep breaths. If you're into meditation or any sort of mind clearing type exercises, try some of those and kind of just get into your body and just kind of see where it takes you. Your inner self, as they say, knows what it is that you need. And so try tuning into that a little bit more. And then my last tip is just to give it some time. I mentioned that it took me 6 to 8 weeks to really finally land on this word. Some of that was I was just doing some personal growth and development, and I didn't want to choose too soon, and I knew it would come to me, so I wasn't too worried about it. But you will know when it's right. You will know what the right word is. You won't forget it. That's the other thing. That other word that I thought was so perfect, I forgot what it was the next day. This word, once it hit me, I never forgot. And same thing with my previous words. Once I had it, I felt it and it was in, and I was really happy with what I chose. And then it took me on a journey throughout the entire year, which that is the point. So that is my word of the year. Those are my tips for choosing your word of the year. Put below in the comments what words you choose. I love talking about this every year. I love introducing it to new people. I just think it's such a great way to go into the next year with some really great intentions. So thanks so much for being here, you guys. I'm here every Tuesday giving you digital nomad lifestyle tips, and I will see you in the new year.